Guys, so I missed last week's church sermon, so I'm going to be doing both this week and last week's on today's video. So it might be a little bit longer, but it might be shorter, who knows. So we started a new plan, I guess, and it's our last plan was Audacious Prayers, but this month or week, 6 weeks or whatever, we're going to be talking about how to win, which I'm really competitive, so it's a good topic. And so we started with the concept of like stretching, and they gave us, I don't know if I still have the bracelet in here. No, it's in the bathroom. They gave us the, those bracelets that you wear that oftentimes are engraved. And our pastor gave us 2 questions to kind of guide ourselves this month. And it was, first of all, like, what am I doing? What am I not doing that if I was doing would stretch me in my faith as a follower of Jesus? And then what am I doing that if eliminated would stretch me in my faith as a follower of Jesus? So things like, what am I not doing? I'm not devoting time in solitude and solidarity, and I'm not devoting time between me and God, or I'm spending too much time on social media, or I'm whatever. And so my eyes are burning today. And so what we talked about for stretch was we really talked about solitude. And I'm a big solitary person. If you look on my phone, I seem like an old lady because all my games are solitaire, Sudoku, like spider solitaire. I swear, where is it? I'm just gonna pull this up. These are the only games I have on my phone. Okay, so I have, where are they? Okay. I do not know how to work this phone yet. So these are all my games. And there is Sudoku, Solitaire, Pyramid Solitaire, Crown Solitaire, Spider Solitaire, Addiction Solitaire. And then this puzzle game that's, you can't really tell, right there. And it's like kind of like Sudoku, but it's called Nonogram. And then like Blockudoku. So they're all like different kinds of Sudoku and different kinds of, yeah. Well, anyway, so we started off with Luke. And I finally got like an adult Bible that isn't on my phone and isn't pink and flowery and stuff. So thanks, Mom, for that. And I'm really excited to see how old and weathered and wear and tear it gets. Okay, so Luke 5, verse 12. Whoa. Oh, okay. While Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he fell with his face to the ground and begged him, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him. Then Jesus ordered him, "Don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priests and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing, as a testimony to them." Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that the crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Okay, so we have underlined, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. And again, my messy notes. And so this whole week, last week, that we talked about was solitude. And that's why I talked about solitude is not being lonely. It's not being a loner. It's not like, it's about having intentional time between you and God. And so you can have solitude with Christ and not be alone. But it's about putting your focus on that and not on other things. And so if you get distracted, then I'm clipping my hair up 1 second. Then bothering me. Okay. Then maybe you need to be alone. And if you get distracted, then I don't know. So, our points. So solitude is a state of being alone, and then for us, it's being alone with God. So solitude for us is a state of being alone with God. And in that, the important, I guess, the keynotes of the kind of solitude you want to have with God is, so there's little solitudes. And in that, it doesn't have to be 9 hours long of you, or like an hour long even. You can just set aside 7 minutes a day. Anything. And I do this time when I'm in bed, when I'm in my car worshiping, when I'm doing time like this, when I'm just setting aside. I get in the hot tub every night and I read, and then I set aside my book, and I'm just having that solitude and that solidarity. I don't even know if I'm using the word solidarity right. What is solidarity? Okay, solidarity. I have a feeling it's something. Solidarity. Unity or agreement of feeling or action, especially among individuals with common interests, mutual group within a group. Okay, I didn't say solidarity right. But having that time can be anywhere, can be for however long, and being little solitudes, it's more important to have those little solitudes than it is to have an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours less often. And you're supposed to have those solitudes with God every day. And that's what I think is so cool, is that you, being a Christian and being in a relationship with God, doesn't mean that you have to go to a place to do this. You can literally just be in Times Square and have that, and like he's in here. He doesn't have to be this face-to-face where you have to have quiet. And sometimes peace and quiet are good for that, but sometimes you don't need that. If you feel like you have a hectic life and you don't have the ability to have that quiet time, it doesn't mean you can't have that solitude with him. And then having planned solitudes, and I wrote here, you don't have to be physically alone, but planned solitudes is like it being intentional with that. I use intentional a lot when I talk about faith, and like your actions and your relationship with God is being intentional with the time you spend with him, and with the way you act towards others, and the words you use, and the your prayers, and etc. And you're having, okay, so a lot of times when we think about, like, even if you're not religious at all, like when you think about Christians, you think about them having these like moments. I always call them aha moments, and I don't even think that's a thing, but these like revelations, and here it's written like God moments. And I'm gonna be honest, I always feel like I have them, but I always feel like I'm like lacking, and I'm like, I just want to have that like big aha moment right now, or whatever. I think this is blurry and it's really bugging me. Okay, maybe it's not. It's just low quality. Getting distracted. But what's so cool is the fact that the more time you spend in solitude with God, and the more time you spend in prayer, and the more often this is happening, the more time, the more like open and the more God moments you'll have. It's kind of like your odds go up the more you play a game, or the more you do something. Like, I don't know, like the more, I don't know, you get it. And so it's just, the more practice, the more moments you'll have. And that is a combo of like little solitudes and planned solitudes. And it really goes into spiritual disciplines, and that is in solitude and stretching yourself. And so then we're going to go into this, where it says, these are why. Sorry, my grandma came in. Told everyone not to come in. Set my grandma. So note to self. Okay, and so going into kind of like when we need to be, specific times that it's really good to have solitude with God are before big decisions. And so we're going to go into Luke chapter 6. Oh, that's what we just read. 12 through 13. And so this is when I already read this, but I'm going to reread this. While Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was discovered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he fell with his face to the ground and begged him, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him. Okay, so in this it says before big decisions. I don't know why that's the verse they chose. And after. Honestly, like, so if you're about to go decide you want to move somewhere, like, spend that time in prayer and conversation with God. Like, spend that time in solitude. Almost said solidarity. Spend that time with Him and getting that reassurance and guidance. I don't know. So if you've ever like sat and just like thought, like you're just like in your mind, I think that is like speaking to God. Like I think that is speaking to God unknowingly. And this is just my personal opinion. I think I've jammed my pen into this counter so many. Okay, sorry. And it's just you're in that peace and you're in that conversation within yourself. But have you ever thought about like why you would be able to like speak in your mind if no one can listen? And that's the thing, is like for me is like God is the one listening. Like that's why we have that, to have that peace and solidarity. Oh my gosh, solitude with God and in that prayer. But again, this is just my personal beliefs. And then have times of solitude and prayer with God to get perspective, which is a big thing. I have like a ton of stars, and it's to change your pace, to change your place, and to change your perspective. So it kind of like slows down your day, because sometimes it's really hard to get an understanding of what you're needing, of what you're wanting, of a decision, of a question you have, of a dilemma, when you have all this going on. And having that solitude slows everything down. It changes that pace. And sometimes changing the place that you're in, the setting, and moving that into a peace and a place with God changes your perspective. And so we are talking about Matthew. Okay, Matthew 14. Not used to having a actual paper Bible. Okay, Matthew 14, 12 through 13. We talk about... Okay, John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowd followed him on foot from the towns. Sorry, gotta underline. First underline in my new Bible. Haven't even written my name. Okay, so there are so many times in the Bible when things happen, and not everything that happened with Jesus was like documented in the Bible. So if you think about how many times it was, then how many times can you imagine that Jesus, like in these moments when he just withdraws, he doesn't soak in the fame, soak in the glory of his whatever, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. He spends time with God, and we're like, that is our sole purpose as Christians, is to be more like Jesus. Withdraw ourselves from this like hectic world and stress and into that solitude. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say, solitary. Our solitude place with God. Okay, so if you guys ever. Okay. You know, in times that you just like hurt, like you're just in pain internally, like not physically, it's just like you're hurting from something emotionally or mentally. I've experienced a lot of that this year. And you kind of like just go numb. You're like soaking in the pain but going numb. Instead of that, like spend that time that you're laying in bed, like just like in pain, like turn that into solitude with God, and he alleviates that pain. He's like a painkiller, the emotional one, I guess. I don't know. And then the last one is so that leads into to deal with pain. Matthew 14:12-13. It's the same one we just read. Oh, perspective. I read the wrong one. Okay. Perspective is the number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on the mountainside by himself to pray. By himself to pray. Another time. And this is kind of, too, is like, I think of like on a mountainside as you're overlooking the valley. You're getting a new perspective. And he changed that setting and got a new perspective. And changing your perspective can launch like a rubber band, in a new place and into a new direction. And then finally, to be refueled. So this is in Mark. (1:32). I'm way past Mark 1. Okay. Mark 1:32-37. Okay. The evening after sunset, and the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place, where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Again, I really don't know how that associates. So really, how are you refueling yourself when you're down and out, when you're just tired emotionally? How are you refueling that? Are you refueling by, I don't know, going out and having a good time? That's not a bad time. That's not bad. But instead of just that, refuel with Christ in that solitude and in that in those solitary moments. Solitude is just as important for times of victory as times of trouble. So don't only go into solitude when you need something, when you're in pain, when you're in trouble, when you are trying to make a decision, but go into it after. Go into it in celebratory moments and thank God for what he's done. And that is like part of what we do in communion. Which leads us into this week's sermon, which I'll probably be able to speak faster about. Okay, so this week, so it's abstain is to attain. Wow, I wrote that in O's and they're A's. Okay, so this week, our spiritual discipline was, and I'm totally spacing because I'm super messy. Okay, fasting. But what I led into on that last note was that communion is a time for us to thank God, but it's a time for us to reflect. Remember what he's done for us, and 2, reflect on your own life and reflect on on what you can do with that. And so going into fasting, I'm going to read Daniel 1. Okay, Daniel 1. Then the king ordered I'm going to struggle with these names. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility. Young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. I'm about to have a hiccup and I have no idea why. I think it's going away. Okay, sorry. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years. After that, they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel, the name Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. Meshach. Okay. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official permission not to defile himself this way. Now God had caused the official... I'm really struggling today. The official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, "I am afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? The king would then have my head because of you." Daniel then said to the guard, whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see." So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away their choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge, understanding. God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into the service, the chief official presented him to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in the whole kingdom. Okay. Oh, and Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. Okay, so in that you can see that they cut away the fasting cuts away the wow, I'm really losing my train of thought. But it cuts away the toxins and the fluff of the world and cuts it down to those bones, and it cuts it down to God, and that is it. And He fuels you. He fills you with life. And so, moving on to that, fasting is abstaining from all or certain types of food and drink. And it comes from the Hebrew word tazum, which is, I think it's just zoom, but it's T-S-U-M, which is to abstain. And then turning that into fasting is abstaining from something desired to draw closer to God. And it's instead of getting you more time with God, it's also getting God more time with you. And moving that into, so fasting is a privilege, and we're going to talk about Matthew. Wow, I'm really struggling here. Okay, Matthew 6:16. Okay, Matthew 6. When you fast, do not look somber, as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. Fasting is a privilege as much as food is a privilege. And not fun fact, it's actually not fun. A terrible fact that the world population, a third of the world population is well fed, a third is underfed, and a third is starving. And there are record numbers for those who die of starvation in the world. And it's just, those numbers are insane. And so from that, fasting purifies your soul and it purifies your body. It's removing those toxins from you. So that leads into Daniel 9. Oh, whoa, Daniel is short. Okay, Daniel 9:3 through 6. So I turned to the Lord God and pleaded with him in prayer and petition, in fasting and in sackcloth and ashes. Lord, I pray to the Lord my God and confess, Lord, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. We have sinned and done wrong. We have been wicked and have rebelled. We have turned away from your commands and laws. We have not listened to your servants, the prophets, who spoke in your name to our kings, our princes, our ancestors, and to all the people of the land. So fasting goes into, like I said, purifying your body and your soul. And that's not something that's really hard. Is we talk about all these diets. Like, fasting is not a diet. Diets are can actually harm your body. Fasting is cutting away things that are harmful, things that are damaging, things that you're paying more attention to that than you are to your Holy Spirit, to God, to Jesus, to your faith, to yourself, to your your intentions, being intentional. And sometimes fasting doesn't even have to cut away the unhealthy, like physically for your body. Sometimes it's cutting away the stuff that you just put more focus to. Sometimes it's cutting away Netflix. Sometimes it's cutting away social media. Not because, yes, things like that can sometimes are often very bad for your self-respect and for time. Like, times have gotten really bad in that. But there are sometimes that you're cutting away just time you're spending in something else that you could be spending with God. And it's not a permanent thing. It's just for that short amount of time. We were challenged by our church to fast from something for 21 days, which is really ironic because I've been wanting to do something called intermediate fasting. And that's where you fast from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. And I've talked about how I'm a night person. And I also, I don't eat very much during the day, but I can chow down at night. And so for the next 21 days, I'm going to be fasting from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. every day. And when I get hungry and when I literally just fill a bowl of cereal or something, I'm going to sit down and pray. When I'm not starving. I'm not starving because I'm fortunate and I'm privileged enough to have a roof over my head and food and water and electricity and everything that I could ever need and more. Be thankful for that, because a lot of us have way more than we think we have. And then number 3 is fasting is powerful. And what talks about that is Mark 9:29. Okay. And he replied, "This kind can come out of prayer and fasting. Only by prayer and fasting." So in this story, this is when we're brought forth some kind of spiritual healing. And that's the thing, is some things can only come from prayer and fasting. And prayer and fasting are part of solitude and solitary. Having that solitary with God. And number 4 is fasting brings God's provision. And we're going to go back to Daniel. Ten, 2 and 3. At that time, I, Daniel, mourned. For 3 weeks, I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until 3 weeks were over. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing in the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of multitude. I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision. Those who were with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves. So I was left alone, gazing at this great vision. I had no strength left, my face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. Then I heard him speaking. As I listened to him, I fell into a deep sleep, my face to the ground. A hand touched me and sent me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you are highly esteemed. Consider carefully the words I am about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. Then he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help him, because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come. While he was saying this to me, I bowed with my face toward the ground and was speechless. Then one who looked like a man touched my lips and opened my mouth and began to speak. I said to the one standing before me, I am overcome with anguish because of the vision, my Lord, and I feel very weak. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone, and I can hardly breathe. Again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me strength. Do not be afraid. You who are highly esteemed, he said, peace. Be strong now, be strong. When he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, speak, my Lord, since you have given me strength. So he said, do you know why I have come to you? Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. When I go to the prince of Greece, will come. But first I will tell you what is written in the book of truth. I just way past 2 and 3. But fasting brings God's provision. It brings those moments of those visions, those moments of, like we said, the more time you're spending with God, the more solitude, and the more effort and the more intentional you are with God, the more provision and the more God moments you'll have. So, fasting is also showing, don't love the world and worldly possessions and worldly items more than you love God. You can love them, but don't spend time with them and give more of yourself to them than you are giving to God and to your faith. So, the Son of the living God will walk through whatever trial you are in with you. He walks it with you. He feels the pain that you feel. He knows what situation you're in, and bringing that solitude and bringing those intentions to him and giving it to him. Spending that time in conversation, in peace, in solitude, and just in that time with him, it brings clarity. It brings God's provision. It purifies. This privilege is so powerful. That time with God is just speechless. I had a conversation the other day with, I feel like we all relate to this, but that family that's not related to you, but you call them your cousins or whatever. I'm just gonna call her my cousin. She's more like my sister. And she is going to be a freshman this year in high school. And she is Catholic. And I recently went to Mass. And for me personally, it was really confusing. And honestly, so my roommate in college who I lived with during last summer, their family is Mormon. And so my mom challenged me to go to church with them. And I didn't necessarily agree with everything that the church offered. But I do see from their point that I do think they're more devout Christians than many Christians I know. And I respect their beliefs, and I respect them for what they believe and for their actions, and they're very loving. And not at all stereotypical. So yeah, but it was really similar to that. I don't know. It was very weird. And we started talking about that, and it kind of led into this like 2-hour conversation about like what we believe, what we're confused about. Like, I kind of asked her, like, do you think that you get what you need out of that church setting? Would you ever want to join me? And kind of just got a feel for what she really took from it. And I just wanted to understand better. And I find that learning about a lot of, and not that Catholicism is a different religion. I'm non-denominational Christian, so I guess I float. But getting into learning about other religions is honestly a great start in being in your own faith and in being your own Christian, because you have a better understanding of just like the world in terms of religion. And anyways, we're having this really deep conversation, and just talking about like what is that core value. And you guys have heard it from me tenfold about God and the love of God, and like my purpose with the world that I feel and I've heard from him is to go share God. I'm actually planning, okay, it doesn't look that good when I do that, but I'm planning on getting this tattoo soon, as in this week. And it means bhakti, which is a, oh my gosh, it comes from, I'm totally spacing, Hinduism. And it's like love and devotion for your God. And it's been taken into other religions and it's a Sanskrit word. And Sanskrit is something I'll be learning in my yoga instructing course. And it's just something that I can take, and it's basically like the word for what I believe my purpose on this earth is and with God is my devotion and love to him, and his devotion and love to me is what my purpose is. It's to share that and to absorb that. And so like going on this journey that I'm going to be going on soon, like that is, I started making these bracelets. They're not very good, but all of these just like bracelets, and over the next year or so until I go, I'm going to make these, and I'm going to take them and just hand them out as gifts to kids, and just say like, I love you, like you are in my heart, and I want to get to know you. And I'm not going just to, see a cute kid next. Like I want to go get to know people and to love on people and forgive people and share God's love that they may not receive in their situation. Who knows? And also they can be 10,000 times more loving than people here can be, and I can be. Like, I want to share and absorb that. And it's just, we were talking about that and having this great conversation about like, you can always turn to God, always, because he knows exactly what situation you're in. And it's just crazy. And then the last thing I want to say is, I forgot to mention this, is so your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. So treating it well isn't to look good, like eating healthy or whatever. It's not like important so that people think you're attractive and things like that. If you disrespect your body and I'm not saying that eating unhealthy is disrespecting your body, but you want to honor your health and honor your body and honor yourself, not to please others, but to please God, because you are his masterpiece. And can you imagine just taking a sculptor's like masterpiece and just not caring? You want to honor God's work and honor his value of you. That was all over the place, and I totally wrote this somewhere, and I want to say this before. Oh my gosh. Okay. To abstain from in the flesh leads to obtaining to in the spirit. So I would love if any of you wanted to join me in that 10 to 10 fasting, intermediate fasting, or any kind of fasting from social media, fasting from whatever. If it's on your heart, especially if it's not, sometimes you need that challenge. It's not always going to be comfortable. You're not always going to, like, I'm going to be hungry. I've really tried. I tried the past 2 days and I had to have snacks. Now I'm going to do it though. Okay. So thanks for that, listening to that super scattered message, but love you all. And I'm actually planning with the opportunity to possibly go to Israel or Dominican in the next year. So I'm really excited. Yeah. Okay. Bye guys.